Hello, it's me Harley, back at it again for yet another video, and today I am going to be talking about a topic which has been appearing generally on YouTube and social media over the last couple of days. And the reason why I'm talking about it is because, unlike most YouTubers who are talking about this controversy, I kind of actually have some experience and knowledge of the kind of field that I'm talking about, and that is on the controversy around the film Cuties on Netflix. Honestly, this is a topic that hits close to home to me. I just wanted to share my opinions on the trailer, my opinions on the topics, and share some of my stories. In case you aren't aware of this situation, Netflix is going to be releasing a film called Cuties, which is about young children dancing provocatively. And that's literally the synopsis. That's what it's about. Now then, I have been part of 7 different dance classes and dance groups in total. In fact, there are a couple of workshop classes and things that I've done which I haven't considered and classed as dance schools I've been parts of because they've only been short-term things. However, I have had my fair share of dancing experiences. I danced from the age of 2.5 until I was nearly 13.5. So that's a good 11 years worth of dance experience. During that time, I did multiple dance shows and competitions. So many that I have no way of remembering just how many I did. I lost count ages and ages and ages ago. On top of that, at one point I was doing 12 different dance lessons a week. So when I say I have experience in this field and I know what I'm talking about, you can probably trust me on that. There's not a lot of people who have had as much and as wide a branching experience as I have. Where shall I begin? The biggest controversy around the trailer is the outfits that the kids are wearing and the provocative dancing. I'll begin with the main reason why I gave up dancing, because that is literally the reason why I gave up. There's all sorts of different provocative dances, and there's one in particular that sticks out to me because I think it is incredibly wrong to start teaching kids as young as they are how to do this dance, and that is the can-can. Now then, do not think I am bashing anyone who performs the can-can. It is an amazingly beautiful and difficult dance to do. In fact, it's one of my favourite dances out there because it's just so much fun and so lively. On top of that, I think the dancers who are willing to put themselves out there in that way are incredibly body positive, and I completely respect that. Do not think I am in any way, shape or form bashing people who do the can-can. However, it is a sexual dance. There is a lot of high kicking, there's lots of flexibility and suggestive dance moves. In fact, I'd say it's more suggestive and more sexual than twerking, because it doesn't just do moves similar to twerking in some ways, but it also does more subtle ones as well, which leave to the imagination. My biggest issue though with this dance is how young some girls are when they are training to do the can-can. Now don't get me wrong, this is a difficult dance, especially when done in a really good way. Obviously you have more amateur versions and more professional versions. The more professional the version, the harder the moves. Make sense? That means that I can understand why some people would take a long time to train. However, you do not need as long as some people say, and you especially don't need to start training kids to do this. Now then, by kids, I mean that at 2 different dance classes that I went to, they started training kids to do the can-can at the ages of 10 and 11 years old. I was 11 personally when I started learning the can-can, but in my class and my grade, there were a couple of kids who were only 10. Now, no kid should be learning to do this dance. I'll put some pictures up to show you just some kind of moves and some of the costumes that are used in the can-can. And I'm not expecting to be monetised for this because 1, I don't get monetisation anyway, and 2, the topics just generally that I'm talking about are not really YouTube friendly. But yeah, so 11-year-olds start doing this. This is common practice. This isn't just like a couple of dance classes in my local area that do this. This is pretty much all over the world. So that just gives you a clue. Admittedly, you aren't meant to perform the can-can at 11, but you don't start performing the can-can until surprisingly a small amount of time afterwards. I'm talking that most girls, when they do their first ever can-can performance, do it at the ages of 15 and 16 years old. Yeah, that is just disgusting. Do you know how many weird, perverty people you get in audiences during that performance? It is really, really just, there's no other word for it other than disturbing, and possibly, in fact, definitely disgusting as well, that kids as young as 15 and 16 are literally, essentially, flashing on stage. As I said, I was not any different. I started learning the can-can at 11. Thankfully, I never got to do a can-can performance on stage. So I was never doing those explicit moves and stuff at 15, 16 years old. So, as I said, I gave up dancing at 13 and a half. However, unfortunately, I cannot say I haven't done explicit dances. There's 2 different performances, or rather 2 different dance routines in particular that I've experienced that I can speak about. And one of them was a bit tamer than the other. The first one was a tap dance routine to the song Blue Suede Shoes by Elvis Presley. Now then, the dance routine had a couple of suggestive moves, but it wasn't that bad. The actual dancing itself was a standard tap dance rather than a sexy tap dance. However, I remember this dance routine was the first dance routine I ever did which made me feel uncomfortable with what I was wearing. And at the time I was 12 years old. Why would I feel uncomfortable in this clothing? Well, I was wearing a black suede crop top which kind of had a low cut and went up very high under the chest. During the entire time I was off stage, I was constantly pulling it down because I felt so physically uncomfortable that it drove me mad. I was also wearing a shiny silk miniskirt that would, and constantly did, ride up. So we had to wear tiny little booty shorts underneath. I remember that the quick change after doing the performance was the quickest change I will ever do in my life because I just wanted to get out those clothes and into something that covered me up more. It was highly inappropriate to put kids in those clothes, and honestly, I thought it couldn't get any worse. But I'm mistaken, because I was still 12 at the time when I started doing this dance routine, and I don't know, this outfit just, can you imagine, I don't want you to imagine imagine this because, to be honest with you, you will have really disturbing thoughts if you do think about this, and I'm sorry to put that on you. But this dance was to the song When Love Takes Over. And for this dance, it was like a jazz dance. So we had jazz shoes on, we had leg warmers, fair enough. But then the rest of the clothes, not fair enough. We were literally wearing fishnet tights, black booty shorts, and a tiny red crop top with only one strap. And that crop top was sequins all over. Really, really bedazzled. Now, I hated this outfit so much. I was, again, not at all comfortable in it. I just couldn't cope with this dance routine at all, because it wasn't just the outfit that was suggestive, it was the dance moves as well. There were some very suggestive dance moves in that dance, and as I said, I was 13 years old. The oldest girls in that dance routine were 15. The youngest were 12. So I was one of the youngest ones in that group, but these girls were 12 to 15 years old, dancing suggestively in skimpy clothing, which, it's horrible. So I just don't know how to feel about that. My mum and dad at this time were really starting to question whether they wanted me to continue dancing. When I was 13, I'd learnt the dance moves for an upcoming competition, and it was around this time they revealed what the costume would be. Because I never actually tried it on, I only ever heard a description of it, I couldn't cope with just the description. It was so skimpy that I went, I can't do this anymore. I don't feel comfortable dancing. The biggest passion of my life was destroyed. I could deal with the toxic people, but this skimpy clothing and suggestive dancing and stuff just made me feel so physically out of place that I gave up the biggest passion that I had in my entire life. I did more dancing, like even now, I've spent more of my life dancing than I spent not dancing, which, even though I've given up for 7 years, really plays in my mind quite a lot. So I'll now go on to some things which probably aren't covered in the film, or at least they're not covered in the trailer. Makeup and dancing. This one's very close to the whole suggestive clothing situation, but this goes back way before the suggestive clothing even starts to begin. How old would you say is okay for a child to be wearing makeup? Well, in dance communities and stuff, there isn't an age limit. You can be as young as anything. Now then, I'm not very good at makeup now, as you can probably tell. I have not kept up with it, because basically as soon as I finished dancing, I stopped keeping up with the trends in makeup and music and stuff. It wasn't really my personality, and I only ever did it to fit in with the community. I can quite confidently say that I was up to date and with the trends in makeup and hair when I was 6 years old. I could put my makeup on by myself. I'm not just talking about eyeshadow and lipstick, I'm talking about a full face of makeup and my hair styled in like specific ways for dance classes and dance shows and routines and competitions and all that jazz. However, I didn't start putting makeup on at 6. You are expected in dance classes and stuff to have makeup on for your first ever performance. And that means you can be 3 years old when you have your first kind of like makeup experiences. Now in my mind, I can understand to a certain degree that if a 3-year-old wants to be like mummy or wants to be like big sister or something and wants to wear makeup, I can understand a bit of lipstick and maybe some eyeshadow, just to make the kid be like mummy or be like big sister. However, putting more than that on, in my mind, is inappropriate. And we are talking about 3-year-olds going into their first dance competitions and dance shows with a full face of makeup, which I think is just horrendous. But in the dance communities and things like that, it's perfectly normal. It's not frowned upon. It's part of life. So you're just meant to accept it. I think it's just mad. The next thing that I'm going to talk about, which is another completely horrible and obnoxious part of like the dance community, is body image. Now, it's no surprise, there's all these jokes that you see about ballerinas and anorexia. And you think, okay, maybe it's just the professionals who have that issue. It's not. It's not. Body image and things becomes a really big topic at such a young age in dance communities. Now then, in schools, this can also be seen, but from my experiences and stuff, and from what I've heard from other people, you don't start having body shaming in people until kind of secondary schoolish time, usually around then, so around 13, 14 years old. However, this starts much earlier in dance communities. I'm talking about, you start off with the odd comments and stuff when you are about 5, 6 years old. And by the time you're 8 years old, you are being bullied if you don't look exactly as you're meant to be. Now, as a kid, I wasn't fat. I'm a bit overweight now. I'm classed as overweight, not a healthy or normal weight. And I've been working really, really hard to get my body back down again, because I have all sorts of health issues. And I know a lot of people say, oh, I've got health issues, therefore it's hard to lose weight. No, literally, my genetics have completely messed me over and it is almost impossible for me to lose weight. But back when I was a little girl of 8 years old and stuff, I was by no means fat. I was not overweight. I was probably on the, or at least in my mind I was, but I don't know if I actually was, I was on the heavier side of healthy, but I was a healthy, normal weight for a kid. This isn't good enough in dance communities. The amount of like bullying and pressure kids get is absolutely horrific, because I remember by the time I was 8 years old at dance classes and stuff, I was getting bullied for being the fat one in the class. Technically I wasn't the largest girl in the class. There were about 3 or 4 of us, and this is in the different dance classes. In each different dance class there'd be about 3 or 4 of us who were a healthy weight but on the heavier side of healthy, and we'd get bullied. This doesn't stop, it just gets worse the older you get. I remember by the time I was 10, I was already starting dieting and trying to get slimmer, to be prettier, to fit in with the other girls. This doesn't work at all, because when I was 10 and things, the dieting and stuff advice that you get is if a diet doesn't work, which it hadn't been for me, it is a perfectly normal thing in dance communities to positively persuade people to become anorexic and bulimic. So I'm going to go into really personal territory now. I'm going to try not stutter, and I'm going to talk about this a bit more. I have had my fair share of anorexic and bulimic experiences. When it comes to anorexia and stuff, I wasn't very good at that. And the main reason why is because I have a very, very supportive mum who would make sure I got enough food. And if I tried to be anorexic, my mum would basically force me to eat more food and really start talking about it. Anorexia didn't really work for me, but I did try. Other reasons why it didn't work for me, and it doesn't work really for anyone, I wouldn't advise it for anyone at all, do not think I'm saying that, but I didn't lose weight through anorexia. I'd go for 1 or 2 days without eating anything. When I started eating again, I would overeat because I was so starved and so hungry. I wouldn't actually lose weight through that method. In fact, I didn't lose weight through the bulimic method either, but then, as I said, my genetics do really work against me when it comes to actually losing weight, so I don't know what to say about that. For me, I would more use the bulimic method and make myself sick after eating. And that, again, is really, really unhealthy. Nobody should do that. In fact, it might explain some of my health problems now. again, so this really links into the provocative dancing and provocative clothing, because you're expected to have a certain body type as well, and if not, you are severely bullied for it. Finally, I'll go on to the last really toxic part of the dance community that, again, I don't know if it's covered in this Cuties show that's going to come out, but I'll talk about it because, again, it's another reason why I left. Not the main reason was provocative clothing, followed by the dancing, followed by the anorexic kind of lifestyle and stuff like that. This final part, though, is the adults in the dance community, the dance mums, and even some dance teachers. Dance mums, oh, how do I even begin with them? You know the bitchy kids at school that you absolutely hated because they were horrible and just obnoxious? Yeah? Guess what? They never ever grow up. They don't. They just go on to become dance mums or football mums. One or the other. If they have boys, they go on to become football mums. If they have girls, they become dance mums. If they have boys and girls, they become both. They are the Karens of the world. They are the people who will be rude to managers and go on and try and get higher up, and those toxic kind of people. Now then, some people might think that I started dancing at 2.5 years old. My mum probably pressured me into it, or my dad probably pressured me into it. No, they didn't. If anything, I pressured them into dancing in the first place. When I was tiny, I was obsessed with a particular cartoon mouse that danced called Angelina Ballerina. I idolised that mouse so much I wanted to be a mouse. Like, I don't know what else I could say about that. It was an obsession. I also was quite fond of my nana, and in many ways I still am, even though she's passed away. I loved my nana to death, and she was a dancer. In fact, she was a professional dancer for quite a long time in her youth. So again, I suppose it was just natural for me to fall in love with dancing. I think I was one of the few kids who started at such a young age dance classes who didn't start because their parents wanted them to do it. For the vast majority of young dancers, I'd say it is the mum who pressures them into it at a young age. The mums are as toxic as the kids in dance communities, because they will pressure their kids to look a certain way, to dance a certain way. In their minds, their kids are going to be superstars and like amazing dancers. It's mind-numbing being around those kind of people. There's only one thing I can say which is worse than a dance mum, and that's a dance mum who's also a dance teacher. Oh, we're getting a bit into personal territory here, but I won't reveal any names or anything like that. I'm not that kind of person. But my first dance class that I joined when I was 2.5 was my favourite dance class. And that's mainly because of a certain dance teacher who was my favourite dance teacher I've ever had. Unfortunately, one of the other dance teachers at this dance school was the dance teacher I hated the most. And it was because of that dance teacher I actually ended up leaving the dance school. When it comes to dance teachers, quite often you will find they have favourites. They have certain dancers who they really like and certain dancers that they're not too fond of. Just like you get exactly the same situation with teachers, normal teachers that is, like maths, English, all the general kind of school topics. What can I say about the dance mum teacher? This dance mum teacher not only made it obvious who her favourite students were, but she had an obnoxious brat of a daughter who was in the same dance classes as I was. And whenever she was in charge of that dance class, she would make sure her daughter was front of stage every single dance, and no other kids would get an opportunity Now then, as I said about earlier on, other dance teachers have like favourites. However, they will have their favourites at the front for a certain amount of time and make sure that the people who weren't their favourites at least got a chance to be at the front for a while, to get their faces seen a little bit. Dance mum teachers don't do this. Oh my gosh, it was always her kid and a couple of her friends at the front, and it never changed around. You would always have the same people at the back, and this dance teacher also would criticise the other girls' body types and stuff. She would have a go about certain kids' chubby legs, or say that this kid's sucking your tummy more, it's sticking out too much. This happens with some other dance teachers as well, but this one just made her favouritism so pronounced that it was ridiculous. In fact, this particular dance teacher would almost become as big a bully as some other girls in the dance class. It was that extreme. In fact, she's the reason why I left the dance class. I didn't want to leave the dance school because I loved the lead teacher. Miss Sue, she's retired now and stuff, but God, I really love that woman because she taught me so much and I enjoyed her classes so much. I would have continued at her dance classes if it wasn't for this teacher. In the end, I can't remember exactly what the conversation was about, but this woman, this dance teacher mum, was having a go about kind of the way I looked and had been winding me up the entire lesson. She'd also been picking on one of my friends, and she's one of my best friends even now, etc. So I was really wound up and I snapped. I stormed out mid-lesson and locked myself in the toilet and refused to leave until that teacher left the toilets because I didn't want to come out to face her. I gave up that dance school there and then on that day. I remember having my favourite dance teacher and the horrible dance teacher both standing outside going, come on out, and I was like, no, not until she leaves. Okay, I've always been a bit stubborn, but yeah, that's how I gave up my first dance school. At the time I was also going to a couple of other places too, but that was by far my favourite dance school and the one that I began with. It was my first, it was my favourite. That's my experiences with the dance community. The mums are just as bad as some of the students. In fact, they often actively promote ridiculous clothing and let them go around not just on stage with ridiculous clothing at such a young age, but in everyday life, and it's absolutely appalling the way some of the mums treat their kids. When it comes to the Netflix thing, if you are shocked by the Netflix Cuties show and the trailer, you should be shocked by the entire dance community. It isn't just the show that you should be like having a go at, it's this situation with the whole dance schools and competitions and stuff, because it is horrible. I have body issues even now, and certain, like, I'd still do dance classes if I could, but I hate the way they normalise such ridiculously toxic things that I couldn't continue. And even now, as an adult, I'd feel uncomfortable with just how they normalise such vile behaviour. It's abhorrent, there's no other word for it. I also think the way Netflix has responded to the criticism it's facing is absolutely revolting. They are part of the problem. Their reaction and how they talk about it is disturbing. So, yeah, I was a bit surprised to see that this was having a reaction the way it was, because I suppose in my mind, to a certain degree, part of it is still normal. It isn't just these situations that we should get rid of. So on that note, I'm going to say toodle pip old beans and see you next time. Bye!